Being chased around by a demon called the Midnight Man? Yeah, I think I'm gonna pass. What's up, Rad Fam? I'm back again with another paranormal game / urban legend ritual, however you want to say it. And today I want to explore a terrifyingly creepy one called the Midnight Man or the Midnight Game ritual. It's incredibly spooky, pretty darn terrifying, and like the others, I don't understand why anyone would want to play it. So let's get to it. So as always, whenever we dive into a paranormal game, I have to make this disclaimer just so I feel better. Please do not ever play any of these games we talk about on this channel. I treat these games like scary stories. They're just to be listened to and, you know, have a good spooky time. Regardless if you believe in the paranormal or not, and if you think these games would actually work, I don't want you to play this in case you were to get hurt just by, you know, tripping and falling in the dark or burning yourself with a candle. Those types of reasons. There's lots of ways you could get hurt playing these games, so really, truly, just don't play it. You've been advised, okay? So it's not on me anymore. According to the internet, this urban legend game can be traced back pretty far in history. It is actually theorized that this may have been an old pagan ritual that was used as a form of punishment. Now, if you're wondering why the heck would anyone ever want to play this game, I'm right there with you. There's really no point other than to test your bravery, to have a scary, I won't say good time, I'd say horrible time, because if it actually worked as the internet says it would work, that doesn't sound like a good time to me. Being chased around by a demon called the Midnight Man, yeah, I think I'm gonna pass. But that's it for this game. Like, there is no pot of gold at the end of the ritual. It is purely just because the player or players feel like playing it. Cannot relate, honestly. Now, to me, this game kind of sounds like a mix between hide and seek and tag, but you're playing it with a scary, creepy entity while trying not to succumb to your worst fears. Wow, yeah, this is terrifying sounding, right? Now, what this game actually is, a player or players, this is actually an urban legend game that can be played with multiple people, which from what we've covered so far is quite rare, it seems like. It seems like most of the time it has to just be one single person and maybe possibly a secondary person for like backup, but never like playing together. But this is one that can be played in a group. But the player is said to summon this entity called the Midnight Man. And how this game is played is once the entity is summoned, they have to like keep moving around their house so that the Midnight Man doesn't find them. And during the process of trying to evade this scary, terrifying creature that's now in the player's house, I don't understand why you don't play this. Every passing moment gets more and more terrifying, and that's what it's said to be. It's like you're trying to push through your worst fears while being chased by an entity, which is personally my worst fear. So I don't really know how that would go for me. Would I just be chased by like 10 of them? Oh, no thank you. Too spooky for me. Guess what? If the Midnight Man finds you, oh, you are in for a bad time. A really bad time according to the internet. Now, some people who have claimed to have played this on the internet and shared their stories say that if they got caught, they would be plagued by visions of their worst nightmares. They would get like these hallucinations of everything that they are terrified at all at once, and they would be overcome with this just sense of horrible dread, and obviously that would be quite traumatic to have to experience that. Not only would the paranormal be confirmed by your experience with that, but then also you'd be faced with your most traumatic nightmares, and that would be quite hard to get over, wouldn't it? See, why would you want to play that? The stakes are too high. But then other versions of this story go quite darker and say that the player will meet an untimely death, and usually when their body is found, they will be missing organs. That is disgusting and terrifying. And again, why would you want to play this? Playing around in a dark house in the middle of the night by yourself or with someone else while running away from a scary demon creature. That sounds like the worst sleepover in history. So now that we have a basis of what the heck this game is and why you should definitely not play it, let's take a look at the actual steps of the ritual and things that you should definitely not do. I'm going to be using a website as reference for the steps, and of course, like always, I'll leave it linked down in the description of the video, so if you want to go explore that yourself, because there will be some more information that I'm going to leave out, you can definitely do that. But like I said earlier, this is a game that can be played by a single player or by multiple. And then the player or players are going to need a candle, one lighter, or one book of matches, one piece of paper, one pin, a wooden door that will remain closed, and some salt. And usually salt is used as a form of protection, so I'm gonna say that salt is probably incredibly important for this one. But after gathering the supplies, that is when the invitation is said to begin, and there has to be an invitation before the ritual actually starts. So So the player or players have to start before midnight because the whole point is it has to start before midnight because at midnight, the Midnight Man will come, hence the name. The player then has to write their full name on the piece of paper that they brought with them. They will then have to prick their finger with the pin and squeeze out a drop of blood and then dot the blood on the paper. See, this right here is why I say not to play these games. You know, that might be a dirty pin. You don't want diseases that could come from that. There's multiple people mixing blood. That's a bad idea. Do not do that. You know, lots of diseases and sickness that can be spread, infections, you know, so that is why I have to make this disclaimer once again. Do not play this game. Regardless of the paranormal, do not play this game. There's blood involved. That's creepy. That's gross. Don't do it. But if these people continue to do it, this is when they'll then turn off all the lights in the house. So not just the room, the entire house has to be dark because they have to try to evade this entity. And to do that, darkness is going to be their friend, I guess. I would think an evil entity could see through the dark, but hey, I guess some don't. The player is then going to place the piece of paper with their name on it and the drop of blood next to the closed wooden door. Very important, has to be closed. Then the player will have to light the candle and place the candle on top of the piece of paper and try not to catch their house on fire, I suppose. Oh, and then for some reason, this next step really sends a shiver down my spine. The player will have to knock on that wooden door that's closed with the piece of paper and the candle next to it. They'll have to knock on it 22 times. 22 times. That's a long time to have to wait for the anticipation to build up. Yeah, that sounds incredibly terrifying. But to make things even more tense, the last knock, so knock number 22, has to strike the door at exactly 12 a.m. midnight for this ritual to work. For some reason, I was like, knocking on a door 22 times in the middle of the night sounds very terrifying, but having to time it exactly to midnight would put such an added pressure on the player that alone I feel like would be pretty terrifying. Then once the last knock is knocked at midnight, the player has to open the door and blow out the candle. Then the player will have to close the door and relight the candle. And at this point, the invitation is complete and the game's about to begin. So according to the internet, once the invitation is sent out and everything went according to plan, they did the knocks right, you know, they did the whole writing the name thing down. Once the game is set to start, it's pretty much like you're stuck in this situation until 3:33, the witching hour. So fun. The player has to keep the candle and salt in their hand at all times. So while they're roaming their house trying to evade this creepy entity with every creak and thump and knock that they hear following them, oh, that gives me shivers just to think about. They have to make sure they are clutching on for dear life to this candle and this bag of salt. Should the candle go out, the player must relight it within 10 seconds or else the Midnight Man will catch up to them. So that light and that salt is their only protection against this evil entity. But unfortunately for them, if the candle does go out, fortunately for them, they'll have the bag of salt, and at that point, if they don't relight the candle for whatever reason within 10 seconds, say their lighter won't click over or they, for some reason, didn't bring enough matches, they're said to have to immediately surround themselves in a circle of salt and stay put until 3:33 a.m. Can you imagine if you failed within the first minute? That'd be a long time to have to stand in a tiny little salt circle by yourself in a pitch black house. Oh my god, that sounds so terrifying. Now, there really is no closing to the game. Once the clock strikes 3:33 a.m., the Midnight Man is said to disappear to go back to whatever creepy realm he comes from, and the game ends. So if the person failed and had to stay in a salt circle, or if they succeeded, if you want to call it a success, and managed to evade this terrifying entity throughout the 3.5 hours. Regardless of what had happened beforehand, at 3:33 a.m. he goes away and the players can turn back on the lights and, you know, step outside the circle. And then I guess, what, go to sleep that night? I don't think I'd go to sleep that night fearing that a dark entity just left my house. You know, I feel like a lot of adrenaline would be pumping through your veins. I feel like I would just not quite trust it. I'd feel like maybe the internet was lying to me and that he's still around. You know, I just would rather not be on that thing's radar. So while playing this paranormal terrifying game, there are a few cues, according to this website, that the Midnight Man is really close to snatching you up. If there's a sudden drop in temperature, so if you start shivering, you get that cold chill down your back, you better pick up the pace or find a better hiding spot. The sound of a soft whisper with no person accompanying that whisper, so like if you are playing with a friend or a group of friends, if it's like a whisper from a voice that none of you guys recognize, yeah, grab that salt, just preemptively, do a circle around you probably. Oh, and this is a big one. If an appearance of a humanoid figure suddenly shows up or is in the corner of your peripheral vision, a dark shadow, that's typically what the Midnight Man looks like. So even though your house is all dark, apparently he is going to be like a lightless void of dark that will stand out in the darkness. And if your candle suddenly goes out, so if it seems like someone's blowing it but no one's there, it might have been him. Might have been him, according to this website. Oh, that's so scary. Ugh. Okay, so those are, the warning signs to look out for. So those are the actual steps of the ritual. It is very terrifying, very creepy, very suspenseful. Even just talking about it, my palms are coated in sweat. Very gross. But now that we know what the player has to do, let's look at what the player should never do. If you're playing in a dark house, you cannot use like a flashlight or any sort of electronical source of light. It has to be a candle or a flame source. And that kind of goes back, I think, to the whole idea that this game's been played for many, many generations. So before cell phones existed and before they had like flashlights onto them. And also the idea that the paranormal can interfere with modern technology. And of course, no lights in the house are said to be allowed to be turned on. Turning it on does not make the ritual stop, apparently. So, if you are playing with a group of friends and one of your friends get really, really scared and turn on the light at 1:30, yeah, don't do that. It's not a good idea, apparently. And of course, don't fall asleep. I suppose if you're playing this like at a sleepover or with a group of friends in the middle of the night, someone might get tired, maybe not want to play it as much as the others. You guys are summoning an evil entity. How could you sleep at that point? That's pretty scary. You can't leave your house. Leaving it won't make the situation any better. Apparently the Midnight Man will follow your butt to wherever you think you're going until 3:33. And then the very last one is, no matter how brave or funny you think you are, do not try to tempt the Midnight Man, because it will not end well for you. This entity does not take well to taunts and will really make it his mission to find you. It's always the person making fun of like the paranormal of the ghost that ends up like in a really bad situation, like the first in the group in a horror movie. You know what I mean? Like it's always the person like, ghosts don't exist, and then like literally like the first one to experience a poltergeist activity. And I might have been a little misleading before. When I said that the game ends at 3:33 regardless of what happened beforehand, while yes, that ritual ended at 3:33 regardless, it doesn't mean that the Midnight Man has forgotten the house. Once that door is said to be opened, it can stay open or be reopened easier in the future. It is certainly terrifying, and it makes the hairs on my arm stand on end, and it makes a shiver run down my spine. And the whole idea of having to navigate a dark house in the middle of the night with a very terrifying entity chasing you for 3.5 hours, yeah, this might be one of the worst ones so far. But I think that does it for this deep dive into this paranormal ritual game. If you liked it, please give this video a big thumbs up. It really helps out this video and this channel and this community, the Rad Fam, and I'm very grateful for it. But if you haven't watched yesterday's spooky video, it's right here on the screen, and this will take you to it so that you can go watch maybe some of the scary videos you've missed on the channel. And until next time, keep with radness, and I'll see you real soon. Bye. I just have a feeling one of y'all are gonna say, I'm gonna go play this now. I'm watching you. Don't do it.